if you don't spend, a good amount of time focusing on what your goals are in incremental stages and phases, your goals will seem like an uphill battle. And what we want to do is we want to roadmap our goals. A lot of you guys have seen the board that I had when I first opened up the Take a Look Real Estate Brokers, the whole Take a Look Real Estate Brokers retail space, the space on Stelzer Road. And what I want you to know is that that was all blueprinted and mapped out mentally. And then on paper, the paper helped me to kind of focus on what it was I was trying to do long before I could actually do it. Long before I could actually make it all happen, I had to blueprint it. So we say to get anywhere, to accomplish anything, you must have a vision. And that vision starts by determining one simple question. What do you want? It starts with that. So it's very important that as we go through this process, that you get a notebook and you begin to write out and map out, what do you want? What do you want it to look like? What do you want in terms of the amount of money? What's it going to mean to your life? And how are we going to get there? And we're going to figure that out together. We're going to start working back through. But we have to at least have our ultimate goal. And this goal does not have to be a firm goal. It doesn't have to be something that is absolute. It can change from time to time. But you must have at least a goal. Somebody waiting? Let me admit. Okay. Hang on, guys. I'm admitting Shayna. The key here is it really boils down to personal development. And we're going to use my life. We're going to use my life to kind of demonstrate what the exercise should look like. So the first exercise that we're going to do, and let me move over, is I want you to write down the life experiences and, those pivotal moments, those things that just really caused you to take pause. Like when you think through your life, I want you to write it down. And we're going to use my particular life to go through this process so I can demonstrate. And a lot of these things that I tell you, or I show you about my life, and it's not an entire thing, it's just kind of the sub chapters and how, they're just pivotal moments. They're moments where I will never forget what was going on. So I'm gonna go through it really quickly. It'll take about 2 minutes, bear with me, and it should jog some things that happened in your life. And I know we've all had a fantastic life with lots of stuff happening. So in 1977, that was like the really first big thing. My parents divorced. In 1982, I had an overdose and a near-death experience. I dropped out of high school in 1982. You're going to start to see some patterns. I left home in 1982. I was badly beaten up and almost nearly dead in 1982. I got a GED in 1982. I started attending Columbus Technical Institute, now known as Columbus State, in 1983. My firstborn kid was at 17 years, 11 months, and that was in 1984. The second child, 19 years, 6 months in 1985. I became a single mom, which I wasn't at first, in 1986. I graduated with an associate's degree with 2 kids in 1986. I took my first real estate class at Franklin University in 1986. I went to work my first real job at the Credit Bureau of Columbus in 1986. I worked at Weltman Weinberg Associates in 1987. I traveled to Egypt in 1988. I had my third child in 1988. I purchased my first home in 1989, my second home in 1990. I went to Bank One in Columbus in 1991, my third home in 1992. I attended Ohio Dominican University, or college at the time, in 1994. I obtained my real estate license in 1994. First home sold in 1994 with King Thompson Holzer Woolen. I married my first husband in 1995. My mother had a near-death experience in 1997. Fourth child in 1997. Moved in with my sick mother who was not expected to live in 1997. I quit my job at Bank One in 1997. I bought a building in 1997. I opened the salon in 1998. And then my father died in 1999. I sold my home in 1999 I bought a home in 1999. I moved to Terry & Company Realtors in 1998. My first $100,000 as an independent broker was in 1999. My grandfather died in 2000. Family feud in 2001. My grandmother died in 2001. So grandfather, then grandmother. Sixth child in 2001. Remax in 2003 with my first assistant, which was Seville. Seventh child in 2004. Purchased a fifth home in 2005. I became the top 5% salesperson, one of the top five in the top 5% in 2005 through probably 2014. Let me go back because I got this screen in the way. A lot going on. Moved in 2005, divorced in 2007, Europe in 2007, went back to school in 2009. I was on food stamps for a whole year in 2009, first time I'd ever had to deal with that. I was $660,000 in debt in 2009. I earned $1 million at Remax by 2010. So that's 2003 through 2010, took 7 years, 6.5 years to do it. I graduated with an MBA in 2011. I actually got the broker's license in 2010, but I opened the brokerage in 2011. I joined a network marketing company in 2012, and I traveled for 5 years from 2012 to 2017. And let's move forward. So I have a second page here, and you guys might as well. Met my husband in 2015. Son of my friend and assistant killed in 2015. Childhood best friend dies in 2015. Salon One had no employees in 2016. Moved business to 860 Oakland Park Avenue in 2016. Was audited by the IRS in 2016. Started Barron Tax Services in 2016. Married in 2017 to my second husband. It's Time to Own It was born in 2017. I had a son charged with federal drug charges in 2017. Rental was ransacked in 2017. I began rehab on the building in 2017. My trial for my son was in 2018. Dog of 12 years put to sleep in 2018. Lease signed for Take a Look Real Estate Brokers in 2018. Rehab of space for Take a Look was done in 2018. Death of my third child, second son in 2018. Opened Take a Look Real Estate Brokers location in 2019. Opened the Airbnb in 2019. Flew to Florida to intern my son in 2019. Added agents, and the agents began to grow in 2019. Developed ideologies in 2019. Spent the year grieving in 2019. Pandemic in 2020. Developed the protocols for training in 2020. Recruiting 2020. So it's a lot, right? It's a lot here, and that's not all. That's just the pivotal points. That's just what it is. These were moments in my life where things, just changed. And the point of the exercise is for you to see that it's not a straight line. That, I haven't, in terms of money, there's not a number that I know that I can't achieve. There's a number, any number I decide I can achieve. And I think, when you start to see things like my son died, but the Airbnb was open and the office was opened within the same 30 days or 45 days, then I think you can begin to see that anything you put your mind to, work was a refuge for me. Anything I put my mind to, I might make it happen. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter if I was audited. It didn't matter if my father died. It didn't matter if I almost lost my mother. It didn't matter if my son was charged with federal drug charges. It really just did not matter. The point is that this exercise will help you to get a perspective, a view of your life, so that you can begin to see that things are going to happen, and they're going to happen for sure. It's not going to be a nice, smooth way to your perfect life. It's not. What you're going to have is what I call, after doing a lot of meditation and learning just skills to meditate, you're going to always have a rising and subsiding events. And really, you are sitting in the center of all these arising and subsiding events. And what you have to do is you have to guide and direct, no matter where you are, no matter what's happening. You have to guide and direct and take yourself from where you are to where you want to be. And that takes some mindfulness. That takes some goal setting. That takes some direction. That takes some of all of that to be able to choose and figure that out. And by looking at your life, I've got 2 pages, and that was just a quick 2 pages. Like I'm sure there are other events that I can add here when I start really thinking about it. But what I really wanted to do is give you an exercise so that you can begin to take a look at your life, because your life is going to look different, but it's also going to look very similar when you start to add the events in. So can you think of, I want to give you like 5 minutes to get your notebooks out and think about the events that have set the sail of your life. Think about those moments that just kind of were defining moments. Those are the moments where you actually had to, you just remember them. And from that point forward, there was a difference in your life. Things changed. I want you to set the sail. So take 5 minutes, and I'm going to be quiet and let you take 5 minutes and work on that. Does anybody have any questions about that? You are welcome to speak up. Okay, I'm going to be quiet for 5 minutes. I'm going to set the timer. Got about 30 more seconds. Okay, we are time up. Hopefully you begin to see some patterns. If you want to share some of the things you wrote down that were life-changing events, you're welcome to do so. If you prefer not to, then if there's nobody that wants to share, then we will pull forward and move on with the next discussion. So if anybody wants to share, you can just unmute yourself and go ahead and start talking. All right. It seems like we don't have a bunch of shares today. Okay, but that's okay because it is private. Sometimes it's personal and we just don't want to necessarily put it out there. So I kind of get that. Let's move forward then. Let's talk about what it is we need to be doing. So I'm gonna back up here and I'm gonna talk about your goals. So if you take a look at the events that have occurred in your life, and what you'll notice is that for my particular life, there's been a reoccurring theme to not allow disintegration of the entire life, even when events occurred. So I've always had a sail, I've always had a direction, and I always understood that I needed to be very clear about what it is I'm trying to achieve. Some of you guys might have remembered, because I've been talking about it for a minute, trying to decide what to do next with Bryce Road, trying to decide what to do next with Mayfair, and where am I going if I want to build a house in Florida. That's one of my goals. That's one of my overarching big goals, is to be able to build a property that can sustain and pay for itself in a different state. And that's just, it's going to happen. And what I figured out is that as long as I keep that goal in mind, then as I get myself quiet and I start paying attention to the things that are going on in my life right now, I will figure it out. My mind will start to formulate how to get that done. And it took me about a year of contemplation just to get even an inkling of what it was going to take for me to do it. So in your life, what I want you to do, I want you to review all of those items that you wrote down. And I want you to think about exactly where do you want to be? What should it look like? And then I want you to quantify it. So I'm going to use the example, and yours might be more or less, that I'm going to assume, a number like 15,000 per month would be a good number. And I want you to think about, what does that mean? So let's say you were earning let's say your number was 15,000 a month. And for real estate professionals, that's a 2 to 3 transactions per month. It's not a big, long, difficult goal to reach. It's very, very reachable. Hang on, guys. I'm going to turn this Alexa down. I'm going to turn her down manually. Okay. So the $15,000 per month, Let's just say that's your goal. The question is, when you get that 15,000, what are you going to do with it? What's it for? The most important thing you can do is to figure out what your lifestyle should be, is to figure out what you're going to do with, because that's the driving, motivating, inspiring factor that's going to make you get up and do what you got to do in order to get this life. We don't earn $15,000 a month just to be earning it. We don't earn it so that we can just put it in the bank. We're not earning it so that a bunch of people can ask us for money because they know we've earned it. We're earning it so that we can have our life dreams, our life goals, our life benefits, the best and most biggest and most fabulous life that we can imagine. That's why we want to earn it. What I've done here below on this slide is I've asked a couple questions. And depending on where you are and what you're doing in your business will determine the answer to these questions. I want you to think about how many listings, specifically to real estate, we're talking real estate, how many listings is it going to take you to get to your goal? If your goal is 15,000, then how many listings does it take you to get to that number on a monthly basis? How many buyers? Let's say you prefer not to list property because buyers are just easier to get to. How many buyers would it take you to get to that 15,000? Well, if you're working on an average transaction of $240,000 per transaction, and let me do the math real quick just to make sure, because I came up with the average transaction number, and the gross commission is $7,200. The agent's commission is $5,760. So you wouldn't quite need 3 transactions. You wouldn't quite need 3. You need 2.5 transactions, or maybe more or less. If you got a $300,000 listing, you might only need 2. And what I want you to think about is that possible? That's the question for you. Given all the things that we wrote down, given all the things that you've been through, given what you know right now, is it possible for you to do 2 to 3 transactions per month? And if it is possible, what does it take? I want you to think about that. You're not going to get to 2 to 3 transactions per month by accident. You may do it every once in a while. But what we're looking for is consistency and predictability. And in order to get consistency and predictability, you must have a plan. And you've got to be able to execute that plan. And most of the time, you need to be operating within that plan. Here's what I'm going to tell you as well. There's not a one way to do this thing. You know, I present the way I operate. And if I were just on production, if that's all I were doing on production, I would present you with a plan to produce at a certain level by doing some of the things that I know that are going to definitely, provide the results. But it may not be the best way for you to work it. And the reason is because, whatever it is, you need to operate in your strengths. You need to get 100% mastery over your strengths. So I'm going to read to you one of the pages in Quantum League that talks about the 3-phase approach to life. Now, here's what I mean by the 3-phase approach to life. The 3-phase approach to life is a learn, work, play methodology. It takes the idea of work-life balance and it turns it on its head. Because what they're saying is that, first of all, there is no such thing as work-life balance. When you when you have a goal and you're really on top of something and you need to get something done, you may throw yourself out of balance completely. You may be completely out of balance. I was the other day. I was too tired to even, like yesterday, I came in here for 2 hours and left. And the reason why I did it is because I was going to sleep. I was going to find a place in a corner somewhere and go to sleep. That's how out of balance I was. So there's no such thing as necessarily work-life balance. What we find is, and a better idea and a better theory is work-life integration. And there's 3 phases or 3 things that we like to set in our world. We like to, you got to learn, you got to work, and you got to play. Those are the 3 broad categories. And let me read to you what Gary Keller says about this 3-phase approach to life. So here it is. And I want you to take responsibility 100%. Whatever happens, you are responsible. So you're in charge of your life. No matter how many forces there may be, which seem to influence or even dictate part of your life, there's always that part over which you have 100% complete control. And you know what? Even if you don't have 100% complete control, you can increase that control. If you decide what it is that you want out of your learning and out of your working and out of your playing, you will be infinitely less powerless and less victimizable because you are clear about what it is you want, and you will not accept cheap substitutes willingly. You will no longer be vulnerable to being sold a bill of goods by any passing stranger because it's your life. It's not her life or his life or their life. It's 100% your life. So it's your responsibility. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to move forward a little bit and get into the next slide. So again, we got to quantify, and I had a coach, and I think I talked about him. I've talked about him several times. His name was Todd Bates. And Todd Bates would tell me I need to do money-making activities. And he would back that up by saying, if you got to have your freedom number. You need to know what that number is specifically. And in your life, like I said, it could be different than what it is in my life. What I've determined is my maximum numbers, I don't have to have that. I don't have to have, the numbers that I've done most. I've done as much as just under $300,000 in gross commissions in any one given year, plus all the revenue streams that come in beyond that. I'm talking rental income, construction income. I've had all that for a very long time. So it's probably my top number is probably somewhere around $500,000 a year. That's probably what I've done. But I don't need that. I'm good at somewhere around 200,000 in revenue. I'm good. I can do most of the things I want to do. I don't have any expenses at that point. My life is pretty free. And so I can really get to where I need to be on about 200. Now, if I make 3 or 4, that's good. I'm just going to take that money and do something good for some other people, or build through other people in order to help them to build their lives. So everyone has a freedom number. Most people live their life by default. In other words, they just allow things to happen and don't necessarily steer how their lives are to go, which is why it's so important to determine, what do you want? What's most important? I want you to not necessarily react to situations that come up, but instead, I want you to learn the power of response. And I want you to be able to respond appropriately to the changing, arising, and subsiding circumstances that will present in your world. And how do we know that they're going to present in your world? We know it because if you look at all the things that have already presented in your world, and I look at all the things that have already presented in my world, it's a never ceasing, changing environment. It never ceases. So from the time you were born until the time you take your last breath, you're going to have a series of events that occur. You're going to have people that you lose that you love. You're going to have situations that you're never expecting that are going to come about. You're going to have wins and you're going to have losses. And, that is what it's about. It's about a series of varying events so that you know the difference between joy and pain. You know the difference between up and down. You know the difference between on and off. And you know the difference between success and failure. If everything just came to you with no challenges, with no issues, with no arising and subsiding, you would not grow. So for me, and I speak only for myself, what I know for sure is that life is something about learning how to grow. There's something about life that shows you these dichotomies, these polar opposite situations so that you can grow. Because you are not just your body. As a matter of fact, I would say that you are definitely not just your body. You definitely are not just a human being. You are a spiritual being living a human experience. And that is something that, again, I don't care what your philosophy, your belief system or structure is, we all know when the body dies, it doesn't get up and move. So there's something in it that makes it get up and move and animate. We all know that when it's dead, when without that source, whatever that source is, I don't care what you call it, the body is powerless without that source, without that energy. So I hope I don't sound preachy, but if I do, then I just do. And, and I definitely am not proselytizing and trying to bring anybody to what I necessarily believe. And it's okay if you don't, because you can apply it in your own life the way you have been, raised, or whatever your belief system is. So here's the cycle. It's plan, and then fail, and then learn, and then success, and then revise the plan because you might want more success, and you usually run into what we call ceilings. And in order to break through the ceiling, you have to make another plan. You have to fail again, and we call it failing forward. You may have to take massive and immediate action towards mastering yourself. So plan, fail, learn, succeed, revise, plan, fail, take massive action, and do it all over again. And depending on where your ceiling is, will make the difference in terms of how many times you go through that cycle. Once you master a cycle, it's like, in my world, the cycle is so mastered that it doesn't matter what I do. At this point, in order to break through, like I can break through to another level for sure. It's a never ending battle, but the things that I've mastered, I have mastered. And for that mastery, I will always be able to produce what I have mastered, no matter what. It never goes away. It doesn't matter if I sleep till 1 or if I get up at 8 a.m., unless I'm breaking through another level, what I've mastered, I've mastered. And now I can do it, with my eyes closed, my ears covered, and 2 hands tied behind my back. A lot for the things that I would need to do as an individual if I were being a real estate agent today in today's market. And that was what I was trying to do. Now, why is it, and how do you self-mastery? Is it that you need to learn everything? Absolutely not. You don't need to learn everything. You don't even need to learn you don't need to learn most things. You don't need to learn most things. What you need to learn are the basics. The basics, and the basics may look different for each and every one of you. The reason why the basics look different is because we all come with a different set of skills. Some of us are not really, even though we can manage a transaction, like we all know the basics in terms of, writing a contract, or shopping a buyer, or doing these basic things that we must do in order to get the deal done, or to get a deal in process. But we all have different skills, so the approach will look different for each of us. Some of you, like for instance, I don't want to pick on Irv, but Irv's a phone guy and an email guy. So he doesn't have any problem sending out 1,000 emails a day or making 50 to 100 calls a day. He just does not have a problem with that. You may also be naturally more sociable. If you're the person that's very sociable, and we know we've got some sociability people in this group, then they will use their sociability skills, and those sociability skills will present themselves as part of their natural entrepreneurial gifts. And sociability people very easily attract buyers and sellers. They very easily attract them. However, they still need the basics. And so does the person who is willing to make all the phone calls. And so is the person who will go and door knock. And so is the person who has no problem with doing, mass mailings. You will always have to still get back to the basics. And the basics in real estate is lead generation. So let's get to that. Now, let me talk to you about, on this slide, I want to tell you something. As we master ourselves and determine what it is, the skills that we need, I want you to know it can be very boring. And there's a lot of people who will quit before they even get started. Some of you guys remember when we pulled out the dialer and we're making calls. It's boring. And a lot of times, people will hang up on you. They will be disrespectful to you. So it's not necessarily the most pleasant thing. Now, it's not the only thing we can do. But what I'm saying is, whatever it is that you do well, in mastering it, you're going to have to be willing to take a little bit of redundancy and really, not necessarily be all that excited about getting that done. And what that takes is, it takes a serious level of discipline. To master something, it's a cycle of rinsing and repeating. It's a cycle that means you're going to learn and do these key skills over and over and over again. It's very repetitive. Most people, they'll only get to a mediocre phase unless they spend the time mastering their key skills. And their income, because of that, will remain unpredictable. And then they might say, after they, tried and failed, that it doesn't work. They might say that. So we're going to talk about, I wrote in there Pareto, but it's really Pareto. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about the Pareto principle. 20% of your actions will create 80% of your results. It's a proven principle. It was a principle that was created probably in the 15 or 1600s. And it has been proven over and over again. Last night, when I was kind of going over this with Seville, I mentioned to her one of the examples that I got, studying Pareto's principle. IBM actually did a study. And if you recall, I don't know, everybody knows who IBM is, right? It's a household name. For a long time, their hardware was the number one hardware computer company. They were the number one company for decades. And the reason why that machine, you know, the International Business Machine Company ranked so high is because what they did differently than anyone else, any of the other computer companies that were out there, is they focused on 20% of their systems that made their systems more efficient than 80% of the other systems out there. So they were in the top 20%, but they only focused on 20% of their machinery to improve it so that it would outperform almost every other machine. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the skills and what it takes for you to produce a certain result. As I mentioned, each of us are different, and we have to combine and create our own plan for ourselves. You're not going to do it by default, and it's always a numbers game. Now, you may have to learn some things. You may have to take what it is you already know. And if you are right now, currently, let's just say your skills with lead generation or coming in and being very consistent, like adding dynamic days where, you know, which I tried to instill, and we kind of got thrown off of our horse, so to speak, with the pandemic. But I wanted everyone to dedicate 4 hours a week in mastering their business. And that dedication could be that if you're the person that doesn't mind making the phone calls, that's fine. Let's do it. Let's make those phone calls. How many phone calls? Well, it depends on your skills. It depends on your skills. If you're able to convert people 1 out of every 50, 1 out of every 75 in terms of, you know, finding your next client, well, then it might take you 2 hours to do that. So if you need to find 2 to 3 clients to put in your pipeline per week, if you found 2 to 3 clients per week, you would ultimately get to your number of 2 to 3 clients per month, because you'd be building your database. Maybe you just want to do, maybe what you want to do is you want to build a database and begin to nurture your database, which may mean sending a newsletter or a newsletter email every single week and giving good, valuable information every single week. Maybe that's how we do it. But whatever you decide to do, if you decide to do that, you need to be very consistent about it. In order to see the numbers bear out, you got to do it week in, week out, week in, week out, and you got to be consistently adding to that database. How many people should you have in your database? Well, it depends on what your conversion numbers are. So I'd start with 500 and I'd grow it from there. If you can get a database up to maybe 2,500 to 3,000 people, I don't think you're going to have a problem doing 2 to 3 deals a month. Now, how do you get the people? How do you get the people? Well, you've got to engage somehow, or you have got to go through sources in order to determine how you're going to get these people. People like Stephanie in our title company, she has a series of, or just a host of platforms that you can get into that would help you to begin to develop the relationships. One of my goals, and it can be anybody else's goal, because there's who connects to me may not connect to you, and who connects to you may not connect to me. So one of my goals is to get to know the surrounding area in this zone where the office is located. So you don't have to do that. You could pick a subdivision and get to know everybody in the subdivision. For me, it's getting to know the people surrounding this marketplace. I just had somebody call me last night. He called me and said, well, you know, I came by your office. I'm by there all the time. I just see you're not open. You weren't open. I said, well, no, I'm in here about 40 hours a week at this point. I just was tired yesterday, so I wasn't here. Now, he lives in the homes across the street from Giant Eagle. Who remembers when we dropped flyers there at one point, maybe a year and a half ago?
Yes, I do.
You remember that, right? Okay. So what I'm saying is he now, because we have signs in the window, we had a flyer that came to his house, which is certainly like the fact that he even knows that we're here is amazing to me because we haven't done anything since.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what I'm saying is we got to take the initiative. Now I've scheduled him. I said, come on in. I'll, talk to you when you come in. I also had another gentleman. He came in and got his taxes done. He had just bought a house. He happens to be a cousin of one of my clients who's also a real estate agent. We got to get to know the people around us and build our database. That's another way to do it. And then we've got to nurture that database on a consistent basis. Now, a lot of people, if you're having strong success, you may not feel like you need to do these things. Like if you can, make a few phone calls and kind of default where, put a post out on social media and people start, maybe you get one or two people to connect with you, or maybe you run across people in your daily life and you just happen to tell them you're a real estate agent. You may not feel like you have to do. But I'm going to tell you, you do in order to see the consistency. Some people, so the idea here, you can see, I know what I know and there's more to know. That's where I am always. I know what I know, but there's just an infinite, the more I know I don't know. So that's really what it is. It never stops. Or you can be somebody who is, turning deals or talking to people or making things happen and say, I know what I know. This is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to ignore the rest. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you don't systematize it, you're going to get worn out and burnt out really, really quickly because that system will fail time and time again over the long haul. And I could bring somebody in here who has more of a learning based, I know what I know, and there's a whole lot more to know. They could run the numbers. And when I say run the numbers, they could, get real consistent about contacts, about staying in connection. They could get real consistent about getting to know the neighbors. They could get real consistent about putting out information. They could get real consistent. They could know nobody. They could be not from this city and have no connections whatsoever. And they will ultimately outperform, outproduce, and be running the tables because they've set up a system that allows them to grow their business systematically, predictably, and without just based on a whim, like your gifts. You got to master those gifts. But at the same time, you also have to master the basics. All right. So with that said, I think that's the end of today. The end of what I'm going to talk to you about today. I do want to share a couple of things. And I have a copy of this PDF if you guys want it. I can send it to you if it's something that you want. If you don't need it, that's cool too. But what I wanted to share with you is we have a new agent. And if you saw it in the band, Letitia Parks Reed. No, she's Letitia Parks. Let me stop. She's Letitia Parks. She's divorced. Letitia Parks just actually joined the group. She passed her exam on the 8th of October, and we should be getting her license any day now. So she's joining. Letitia, I met her, and I think I told it in the group. I mentioned it to you guys. She was a client of mine probably 10 years ago. And similar to me, she's got a lot of kids. When I met her, I think she had 5 or 6. Now she's got 9 kids. And she's an amazing woman because you're going to be shocked when you meet her because you're going to be like, there's no way. You're going to ask her if she had triplets or something, multiple births, but she didn't. She had 9 single births. And so she's really an amazing woman. Everything about her is systemic. She does everything with on a schedule. She's also a part of my network marketing group that I'm developing one day a week for 2.5 hours. She's a part of that. And she just bought a brand new house about 1.5 years ago. And I mean, masterfully, talking about dotting I's and crossing T's. This girl was on top of every single last thing with that house. So, and this is long before, like I said, she was a real estate agent. She also kept her property that I sold her maybe 10 years ago. And she's now an investor because that property is now a rental property. And she's on the move. She's going to Tennessee with me this weekend. She's riding with her boo this weekend, and I'm gonna ride with mine. So that's how that's going to go down. But I wanted to share that with you guys just so you can just so you can welcome her. She's probably not hooked up to the group yet, but I don't know, maybe we're going to put her in everything, and so you'll start to see her. The other thing I wanted to tell you guys, if you want the list of emails on the first campaign, which is Not Quite Ready. That's what we're calling the campaign, Not Quite Ready. Then I can ask Seville if she would format them so that they are, because it was kind of thrown together in an email, but format them so that they're maybe on a document, and then you guys can plug them in if you're not in Big Purple Dot. If you are in Big Purple Dot, which is Abba, Shayna, Ashley, and myself, if you're in Big Purple Dot, then we will, they're going to be in a campaign for you. And I want you to start to develop your names, numbers, and email addresses and start to get to know people, so that we can start to send these out. And I got every email address from It's Time to Own It. Anybody that did not purchase, there's a lot of them. There's, hundreds of them. If you want those, I can divvy those out. We can put them in your database. You'll have, a lot more emails. And all those people have already raised their hand saying that they wanted to buy something. So that's a really good list to have. And we got hundreds. So that's something. And I also wanted to tell you, I'm developing a library. And I'm just really gung-ho on it, developing a library. I picked up 2 copies of Millionaire Real Estate Agent. This is Gary Keller's book. I really like Gary because Gary and I have a similar philosophy. So I'm really studying everything he's done in the industry so I don't have to redo it. So a lot of stuff I can just, use his information or use his style and framework it. So I've got that one. I also have the book Shift, and we are getting ready to go through a shift because the politics right now in the United States is really, we have no idea, volatile to say the least. And we still have a record unemployment. And I think there's, we don't know how this thing's going to go down when all this stuff, the dust settles. We know that there's a lot of businesses failing right now. So unless they get bailed out, which I don't know about that either, there's going to be a whole foreclosure market, and I want you to learn how to shift. We'll talk about that as we move forward. The other thing I got was in case you want to be, and this might be backwards, I don't know if it's backwards or forward, is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. This is another book that I will have in this library that I'm developing here. And I would encourage you guys to read these books. Choose whichever one. You're going to get very good information out of these books. And finally, I have a couple others, but I'm not bringing them in yet. The One Thing to Produce Extraordinary Results. So I need for you guys to make it a habit of reading. And a lot of people don't like to read, so you can listen to it on audio, although they say reading is better. But read 10 pages a day. Read 10 pages a day of something. And I've got a book list on the wall. You guys, most of you have a picture of it. Or you can, download the audios on these books. A lot of them, and I will try to pull a couple of them out of YouTube, because there are people who've got the audiobooks out on YouTube. So I just think you need to always keep your mind engaged in personal development, in training, in learning, and in growing. I really do give credit to the network marketing industry for, helping me to break through several ceilings, you know, and really open up my mind on how to grow exponentially. And I would really love for you guys to if I'm not telling you to join the network marketing company if that's not something you're interested in doing, but what I am telling you is that you need to train, you need to grow, you need to be constantly, never ending improving. And I'm going to continue down the Quantum Leap series and get this, you know, rolled out to you guys. I need you to, you know, implement it. If you can get all the information in the world, if you don't begin to apply some of these things, then best believe it won't really impact you. It won't really mean anything. However, if you do begin to apply and begin to take it all very seriously, then I guarantee you will have success like you've never even imagined that you could have. So that's what I have to say today.